My name is Emma Parker, and for 15 years, the world believed I was a thief, a criminal, a disgrace to my family. But the truth was far worse. Because I wasn't betrayed by a stranger. I wasn't betrayed by a business partner. I wasn't betrayed by an enemy. I was betrayed by my own sister. And the price of that betrayal was 15 years of my life. I grew up in a small town in Ohio with my parents and my older sister, Olivia. From the outside, we looked like the perfect family. My father, Richard Parker, owned a successful construction company. My mother, Susan Parker, was a respected schoolteacher. We lived in a beautiful house. We took family vacations. We celebrated birthdays together. People envied us. What they didn't see was what happened behind closed doors. Because in our family, there were always two sets of rules. One for Olivia, and one for me. Olivia was 3 years older than me. She was beautiful, smart, charming, the kind of person who could walk into a room and instantly make everyone like her. Teachers adored her. Neighbors praised her. Relatives couldn't stop talking about her. Even my parents seemed fascinated by everything she did. If Olivia got an A, everyone celebrated. If I got an A, people expected it. If Olivia made a mistake, people forgave her. If I made a mistake, people remembered it. I spent most of my childhood trying to earn the same love she received naturally. But I never could. No matter how hard I worked. No matter how good my grades were. No matter what I accomplished. I was always second place. Always. After college, I joined my father's company. I worked in accounting. I liked numbers. I liked organization. I liked knowing exactly where everything belonged. Olivia joined the company too. But unlike me, she wasn't interested in the work. She liked the attention, the title, the status, the image. While I spent long nights reviewing reports, Olivia spent evenings attending social events. While I focused on details, Olivia focused on appearances. Still, everyone assumed she would eventually run the company. Not because she was better. Because she was Olivia. And nobody questioned Olivia. The first warning sign appeared when Olivia started asking strange questions. Questions about company accounts. Questions about transfers. Questions about internal approvals. At first, I didn't think much about it. She worked there too. It seemed normal. But then things became strange. Large amounts of money started moving between accounts. Nothing illegal. Nothing obvious. Just unusual. When I mentioned it to Olivia, she immediately dismissed my concerns. You're worrying too much. Maybe she was right. At least, that's what I told myself. Until 3 months later, when everything exploded. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I arrived at work expecting an ordinary day. Instead, I found chaos. People were running between offices. Managers were shouting. Phones wouldn't stop ringing. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Then my father called an emergency meeting. Everyone gathered in the conference room. His face was pale. His hands trembled. I had never seen him look frightened before. Not once. Then he delivered the news. $500,000 is missing. The room went silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I thought I had heard him wrong. $500,000? That couldn't be possible. But it was. Money had disappeared from company accounts. Over several months. Small transfers. Hidden transfers. Carefully planned transfers. Someone had been stealing from the company. And nobody knew who. Police became involved almost immediately. Forensic accountants were hired. Computers were examined. Emails were reviewed. Every employee came under suspicion, including me. At first, I wasn't worried. Why would I be? I had done nothing wrong. I answered every question, provided every password, cooperated completely. Meanwhile, Olivia acted supportive. She hugged me. comforted me, told me everything would be fine. Looking back, that was probably the hardest part. Knowing she was lying the entire time. 3 weeks later, I was sitting at home watching television when someone knocked on the front door. I opened it. 2 detectives stood outside. Their expressions were serious. Immediately, my stomach dropped. Emma Parker? Yes. Can we come inside? Fear rushed through my body. I didn't know why, but I suddenly knew something terrible was about to happen. The detectives entered. My parents joined us in the living room. Then one detective opened a folder. Inside were documents, bank records, email records, transaction reports, and every single one pointed directly at me. I stared at the papers, confused, terrified, speechless, because I had never seen most of them before. This has to be a mistake, I said. The detectives remained silent. I looked at my father, then my mother. Neither knew what to say. Then came the words that changed my life forever. Emma Parker, you're under arrest for financial fraud and theft. My heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I couldn't process what was happening. The handcuffs clicked around my wrists. Cold metal against warm skin. A sound I still hear in my nightmares. Outside, neighbors watched from their windows. Some took pictures. Others whispered. The humiliation was unbearable. But worse was still coming. Because as police led me toward the car, I turned around and saw Olivia standing in the doorway, crying, pretending to be devastated, pretending to support me, pretending to be heartbroken. And, for just a second, our eyes met, and I saw something that terrified me. Not sadness, not shock, not fear, relief, tiny, brief, but unmistakable. At that moment, I didn't understand why. I would. Soon enough. That night, alone inside a holding cell, I replayed everything. Every conversation, every document, every strange event. And slowly, a horrible possibility began forming in my mind. A possibility so terrible I couldn't accept it. What if Olivia knew more than she claimed? What if this wasn't a mistake? What if someone had planned this? And what if that someone was my sister? At the time, I pushed the thought away. Because nobody could do something so evil. Not family. Not a sister. Not Olivia. I was wrong. Very, very wrong. The first night in jail felt endless. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same thing. The handcuffs. The police car. My father's disappointed face. And Olivia standing in the doorway pretending to cry. By morning, I still couldn't believe any of it was real. I kept telling myself there had been a mistake. A misunderstanding. Something that would be fixed once the investigation was complete. But as the days passed, the situation only became worse. A week later, I sat with my lawyer for the first time. His name was Michael Turner. He looked exhausted before he even opened the case file. That scared me. If my own lawyer looked worried, what did that mean? Michael placed a thick stack of documents on the table. Emma, we have a problem. My stomach dropped. What kind of problem? He opened the file. Inside were dozens of financial records. Wire transfers. Email conversations. Authorization forms. Every single document appeared to connect me to the missing money. I stared at them in disbelief. I've never seen these before. I know, Michael replied, but proving that won't be easy. The signatures looked like mine. The login records showed my employee account. The transfers were approved using credentials assigned to me. It was as if someone had carefully built a perfect case. A case designed to make me look guilty. The investigation lasted 4 months. And during those months, something even more painful happened. I started losing my family. At first, my parents supported me. They visited. They called. They promised they believed me. But as more evidence appeared, doubt began creeping into their minds. I could see it. My father stopped making eye contact. My mother cried constantly. Neither accused me directly, but neither defended me the way they once had. The only person who seemed completely certain of my innocence was Olivia. At least, that's how it looked. She visited every week, brought food, held my hand, told me everything would be okay. And every time she left, I felt strangely uneasy. Something wasn't right. I just couldn't prove it. 6 months after my arrest, the trial started. News reporters crowded outside the courthouse. Cameras followed every step. My story had become national news. The daughter who stole $500,000. The headlines were everywhere. People who had never met me suddenly hated me. Social media exploded with comments. Everyone had already decided I was guilty. The trial itself felt like a nightmare. Witness after witness testified against me. Accountants, managers, investigators, even former co-workers. Each new testimony made my situation worse. Then came the most devastating moment of all. When the prosecutor called Olivia as a witness, my heart sank. I expected her to help me. I expected her to defend me. Instead, she delivered the performance of her life. Tears filled her eyes as she spoke. She described how shocked she was by the investigation, how much she loved me, how badly she wanted me to be innocent. The jury watched sympathetically. They believed every word. Then the prosecutor asked a question. Did Emma ever discuss financial difficulties with you? Olivia hesitated. Perfectly. Just long enough. Then she nodded. Yes. Ich stirrte hier. My chest tightened. Because it was a lie. A complete lie. She continued. There were times she seemed stressed about money. Another lie. There were times she seemed frustrated with our father. Yet another lie. Nothing she said directly accused me. But every answer planted doubt. Every answer quietly pushed the jury toward one conclusion. Guilty. I sat frozen in my chair, unable to believe what I was hearing. My own sister was helping destroy me, and nobody else could see it. 2 weeks later, the jury reached a decision. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled every seat. My parents sat in the front row. Olivia sat beside them, holding my mother's hand, playing the role of the loving daughter. The jury entered. Everyone stood. My hand shook so badly I could barely breathe. The foreman stood. The judge asked the question. Have you reached a verdict? Yes, Your Honor. The room became silent. The next few seconds felt like hours. Then came the words that changed everything. We find the defendant guilty on all charges. My world collapsed. My mother began sobbing. My father lowered his head. Reporters immediately started writing. I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. The judge continued speaking, but I barely heard him, because all I could hear was one word: guilty. The sentence came moments later. 12 years in prison. 12 years. I was 24 years old. I would be 36 when I got out. My youth, my future, my dreams, gone. Stolen. Not by the court. Not by the police. By Olivia. As officers escorted me away, I turned one last time. And that's when it happened. For a fraction of a second. Olivia smiled. A tiny smile. Gone almost immediately. But I saw it. And in that moment, I knew. She did this. She framed me. She stole the money. She stole my life. And somehow, she got away with it. 3 weeks later, I arrived at the state correctional facility. The massive steel gates closed behind me. The sound echoed through my body. I had never felt so alone, so powerless, so broken. Everything familiar disappeared. My freedom, my reputation, my family, my future. The prison guard looked at me and said something I'll never forget. Either prison breaks you, he paused, or it builds you. At the time, I didn't understand. But one day I would. Because prison wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something else. Something Olivia never saw coming. While she was building a life on lies, I was quietly becoming the person who would eventually destroy those lies forever. The first year in prison nearly destroyed me. Every morning I woke up hoping everything had been a nightmare. Every morning reality hit me again. The concrete walls, the locked doors, the guards, the noise, the loneliness. I had entered prison as a frightened young woman. But fear doesn't survive very long in a place like that. Eventually, it turns into something else. Strength. Or bitterness. And I had to choose. For months, I chose bitterness. I blamed everyone. The police. The court. My parents. Olivia. Most of all, Olivia. Every night I imagined confronting her. Imagined exposing her. Imagined watching her lose everything. Those thoughts became my fuel. The only thing that kept me going. One afternoon, I met an older inmate named Grace. She had spent over 20 years behind bars. People respected her. Even the guards. One day she sat across from me in the prison library. "You spend too much time looking backward." I looked up from my book. "What?" She smiled. "You're angry." I laughed bitterly. "Wouldn't you be?" "Of course." She nodded. "But anger is useful only if it helps you move forward." I didn't respond. Because deep down, I knew she was right. For months, I had been surviving. Not living. Just surviving. Grace pointed toward the shelves. "You have time. 12 years. Use it." That conversation changed everything. The next day, I enrolled in every educational program available. Business management, accounting, law, finance, public speaking, anything I could learn. I studied for hours every day. Weeks became months. Months became years. Slowly, I transformed. While prison took away my freedom, it gave me something unexpected. Discipline, focus, patience. I couldn't control my situation, but I could control who I became. And I decided that if I ever got out, I would never be powerless again. Outside prison walls, Olivia's life appeared perfect. After my conviction, she became the hero of the family. The daughter who stayed. The daughter who helped save the company. The daughter everyone trusted. My father eventually stepped down from daily operations. Olivia took control. Within a few years, she became CEO. The media loved her. Business magazines featured her story. She gave interviews, attended charity events, received awards. People admired her. They called her successful, visionary, inspiring. Every article made me sick. Because I knew the truth. The empire she was building stood on a foundation of lies. 8 years into my sentence, something unexpected happened. A former company accountant named Thomas Reynolds passed away. Thomas had worked for my father for almost 15 years. He knew everything about the company's finances. When he died, his family began sorting through his belongings. Most of it was ordinary. Old papers, tax records, photographs. Someone was beginning to follow that trail. His name was Ethan Brooks, an investigative journalist. He first became interested in my case by accident. He was researching corporate fraud when he came across old newspaper articles about my conviction. Something felt strange to him. The story seemed too neat, too perfect, too convenient. Most fraud cases are messy. Mine wasn't. Everything fit together almost perfectly. And that made Ethan suspicious. The more he researched, the more questions he found. Questions nobody had asked before. Questions that pointed toward Olivia. 10 years into my sentence, I received a visitor request. I assumed it was another reporter looking for a headline. Instead, a young man introduced himself. My name is Ethan Brooks. I nodded politely. He sat down, opened a notebook, then said 4 words that changed everything. I think you're innocent. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Nobody had said those words in years. Not my parents. Not my lawyer. Not society. No one. I stared at him. Why? Ethan leaned forward. Because parts of your case don't make sense. For the first time in a decade, hope appeared. Small, fragile, dangerous, but real. Over the next few months, Ethan kept investigating, interviewing former employees, reviewing financial records, examining court documents. Every answer led to another question. Every question led closer to Olivia. Then one day, Ethan found something extraordinary. The box belonging to Thomas Reynolds. The forgotten accountant. The hidden records. The evidence. For the first time, there was proof. Not enough to clear my name. Not yet. But enough to make people look again. And once people started looking, the truth became impossible to hide forever. Meanwhile, Olivia had no idea. She continued attending events, giving speeches, building her reputation, completely unaware that the foundation beneath her perfect life was beginning to crack. And when those cracks finally widened, everything she had stolen would come crashing down. For 10 years, Olivia Parker had lived without fear. She had everything. Money, power, respect, a beautiful home, a luxury car, a successful company, and most importantly, a secret nobody knew, or so she thought. Because while Olivia was busy enjoying the life she had stolen, Ethan Brooks was getting closer to the truth, closer than anyone had ever been. And Olivia had no idea. Not yet. Ethan spent weeks studying the documents from Thomas Reynolds' box. At first, the records seemed ordinary. Financial statements, transfer reports, internal audits. But buried among hundreds of pages was something unusual. A series of account numbers. Account numbers that had never appeared during my trial. The more Ethan investigated, the stranger things became. The missing money had not disappeared the way prosecutors claimed. Instead, it had moved through several hidden accounts. Accounts connected to shell companies. Companies that appeared unrelated. Until Ethan discovered one small detail. The person who registered those companies used the same mailing address. An address linked directly to Olivia. When Ethan saw it, he froze. Because, for the first time, there was something real. Something tangible. Something that connected Olivia to the stolen money. That night Ethan called my former attorney, Michael Turner. It was nearly midnight. Michael almost ignored the call. But when Ethan explained what he found, everything changed. The next morning, Michael reviewed the documents himself. For hours he sat in silence, studying every page, checking every date, verifying every transaction. Finally, he looked up and said something Ethan would never forget. If these records are genuine, he paused. Then Emma was never guilty. For a moment, neither man spoke, because they both understood what that meant. An innocent woman had spent 10 years in prison, and the real criminal had been free the entire time. 3 days later, Olivia received a phone call. One of her former accountants sounded nervous. Very nervous. Someone has been asking questions. Olivia felt her stomach tighten. What kind of questions? Questions about old company records. Silence. For the first time in years, fear entered Olivia's mind. Real fear. The kind she hadn't felt since the original investigation. She immediately tried to stay calm. I'm sure it's nothing. But deep down, she knew better. Then Ethan showed him the documents. One by one. Carefully. Patiently. Explaining everything. The hidden accounts. The shell companies. The missing transactions. The links to Olivia. As the evidence piled up, My father's face turned pale. My mother started crying. Because, for the first time, they saw something they had never considered before. The possibility that they had abandoned the wrong daughter. That night my father didn't sleep. He sat alone in his office until sunrise, looking through old photographs. Pictures of me as a child. Pictures of Olivia. Pictures of our family before everything fell apart. And for the first time in 10 years, he remembered something. The day of my arrest. The expression on my face. The confusion. The fear. The disbelief. Not once had I looked guilty. Not once. Yet, he had chosen to believe the evidence instead of his daughter. The realization crushed him. Because if Ethan was right, then he hadn't lost one daughter. He had lost both. One to prison. The other to greed. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected visitor. My father. The moment I saw him, I knew something was different. He looked older. Weaker. Broken. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then tears filled his eyes. And I saw something I had never seen before. Shame. Deep, painful shame. Emma. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. I stared at him, unable to move, unable to speak, because for 10 years, I had dreamed of hearing those words. Now that they finally arrived, they felt almost unreal. My father lowered his head. I should have believed you. The room fell silent. And for the first time since my conviction, I felt something begin to heal. Not completely, but enough. Enough to keep going. Meanwhile, Olivia's situation was getting worse. Every day brought new problems. New questions. New risks. The investigation was growing. And she knew it. For years she had controlled the narrative. Now she was losing control. And losing control terrified her. One evening she sat alone in her office, staring at old financial records, trying to figure out how much Ethan knew, trying to figure out how to stop him. Then her phone rang. The caller ID made her freeze. It was Ethan Brooks, the journalist, the man uncovering everything. For a long moment, she simply stared at the screen. Then she answered. And the conversation that followed would change both their lives forever. Olivia's secret was no longer safe. My parents were beginning to learn the truth. And Ethan was closer than ever to exposing everything. But the most shocking discovery was still ahead. For 15 years, Olivia Parker had lived with one belief. The truth would never catch her. She believed the evidence against me was too strong. She believed too much time had passed. She believed everyone had moved on. And, for a long time, she was right. But lies have a weakness. They require constant protection. Truth doesn't. Truth only waits. And after 15 years, the truth was finally ready. Olivia stared at her phone. Her hand trembled slightly. On the other end was Ethan Brooks, the journalist who had spent months digging into the past. The man asking questions nobody else had asked. The man who refused to let my case die. Hello, Olivia said carefully. Ethan's voice was calm, professional. I'd like to ask you a few questions regarding the Parker construction investigation. Olivia forced a laugh. That case ended years ago. Maybe. Ethan paused. Or maybe it never should have. Silence. For the first time in years, Olivia felt genuine fear. The conversation ended politely. But both of them understood something. The war had begun. 3 days later, Ethan received an unexpected call. It came from Thomas Reynolds' daughter, the daughter of the deceased accountant. I found something else. Ethan drove across the state immediately. When he arrived, she handed him an old laptop. Dust covered the surface. The battery was dead. The device hadn't been touched in years. According to Thomas's daughter, her father had hidden it in a storage locker. Nobody knew it existed. Nobody except Thomas. Ethan's heart raced. Because experienced accountants don't hide laptops without a reason. And Thomas Reynolds had been one of the most meticulous accountants in the company. Recovering the data took nearly a week. The laptop was old. Several files were corrupted. Others were encrypted. But eventually, experts managed to access the contents. What they found was explosive. Thomas had been investigating the missing money himself, years before my trial. And unlike the police, he hadn't stopped digging. The laptop contained hundreds of notes, personal observations, financial reports, transaction histories, private emails, and one file stood above all the others. A document titled, Actual Transfer Chain. When Ethan opened it, his heart nearly stopped, because it showed exactly where the missing money went. Every dollar, every account, every transfer. And the final destination wasn't Emma Parker. It was Olivia Parker. But the most important discovery wasn't the money trail. It was an email. An email Thomas had saved years earlier. An email Olivia believed had been deleted forever. In the message, Olivia discussed moving funds through intermediary accounts. She never explicitly confessed. She was smarter than that. But the language was unmistakable. Combined with the financial records, the meaning became clear. Painfully clear. For the first time, there was undeniable proof. Not suspicion. Not theory. Proof. Ethan arranged another meeting with my parents. This time he brought everything. The laptop. The reports. The email. The transfer records. For hours they reviewed the evidence. My mother cried almost immediately. My father didn't. At least not at first. He simply sat there, staring at the documents. Silent. Motionless. Broken. Finally, after several hours, he spoke. Olivia did this. Nobody answered. Because there was nothing left to say. The truth sat in front of them. Cold. Unavoidable. Devastating. Their favorite daughter had betrayed the family. And their innocent daughter had paid the price. That evening my parents drove directly to Olivia's house. Neither called first. Neither warned her. They simply arrived. Olivia opened the door. Immediately, she sensed something was wrong. My father walked inside without speaking. Then he placed a folder on the kitchen table. The evidence. Every page. Every record. Every lie. Olivia's face turned white. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then my father asked a simple question. Why? Olivia looked at the documents. Then at her parents. Then back at the documents. And for the first time in 15 years, she had no answer. At first she denied everything. Then she blamed circumstances. Then she blamed stress. Then she blamed gambling debts. Every excuse sounded weaker than the last. Eventually the lies collapsed. And the truth finally emerged. Slowly. But finally. Toward the truth. Inside prison, I knew none of this yet. I was sitting in the library. Reading. Studying. Living another ordinary day. Completely unaware that outside those walls, everything was changing. The lie that stole 15 years of my life was collapsing. The truth was spreading. And for the first time since the day I was arrested, freedom wasn't just a dream. It was becoming reality. But Olivia's nightmare was only beginning. Because the world was about to learn what she had done. And when it did, her perfect life would shatter. 15 years. That was how long I had lived behind bars. 15 birthdays. 15 Christmases. 15 years of lost opportunities. Lost relationships. Lost dreams. 15 years stolen by a lie. And yet, on an ordinary Tuesday morning, everything changed. I was sitting in the prison library when a guard approached me. Emma Parker? I looked up. Yes. You have visitors. That wasn't unusual. But something about his expression felt different. Almost respectful. I followed him to the visitation room. And when I entered, I froze. My father was there. My mother was there. And so was Ethan Brooks, the journalist, the man who believed me when nobody else did. My heart started racing. Something had happened. Something big. Nobody spoke at first. My mother was crying. My father looked like he had aged 10 years. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. "Emma." He smiled softly. "We found the truth." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "What?" My voice barely worked. "We proved it." The room blurred. Tears instantly filled my eyes. My hands began shaking. "No." Ethan nodded. "Olivia confessed." The words hit me like a wave. I sat down because my legs could no longer support me. For 15 years I had imagined hearing those words. For 15 years. And now they were real. My father looked at me. Really looked at me. For the first time in years. Then he started crying. I had only seen my father cry twice in my entire life. This was the third. "I'm sorry, Emma." His voice broke. "I'm so sorry." The pain in his eyes was unbearable. Because he finally understood. He finally knew what had happened. He finally knew he had failed me. And honestly, that hurt almost as much as Olivia's betrayal. Because I had spent years waiting for someone to believe me. Especially him. The legal process moved surprisingly fast. The evidence was overwhelming. Olivia's confession. The financial records. The hidden laptop. The transfer history. The emails. Everything pointed to one conclusion. I was innocent. News outlets exploded with the story. Television stations covered it non-stop. Social media couldn't stop talking about it. People who once called me a criminal now called me a victim. People who once hated me now demanded justice. The entire country seemed shocked. But none of it could give me back 15 years. While my case moved toward freedom, Olivia's life collapsed. Completely. The company board removed her immediately. Investors abandoned her. Friends disappeared. Business partners cut ties. Reporters followed her everywhere. The woman once celebrated as a business success story had become a national scandal. Every magazine that once praised her now condemned her. Every interview she once enjoyed became evidence against her. Her empire vanished almost overnight. And for the first time in her life, Olivia was completely alone. The courtroom was packed. Far more crowded than my original trial. Journalists filled every available seat. Television cameras lined the walls. Everyone wanted to witness history. The wrongful conviction. The shocking confession. The dramatic reversal. I sat quietly beside my attorney. 15 years older. 15 years wiser. 15 years stronger. The judge reviewed the evidence. Page after page. Hour after hour. Then came the moment everyone had been waiting for. The judge removed his glasses, looked directly at me, and spoke. "Emma Parker." The room became silent. "Your conviction is hereby overturned." Tears instantly filled my eyes. The judge continued. "All charges are dismissed." For several seconds, I couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't think. I was free. Finally free. The prison gates opened later that afternoon. Reporters waited outside. Cameras flashed. Questions echoed everywhere. But I ignored them all. Because standing nearby were my parents. Waiting. My mother ran toward me first, holding me tighter than she ever had before. Both of us crying. Both of us broken. Both of us trying to heal. My father hugged me next. And for a moment, everything else disappeared. The cameras, the reporters, the crowd. None of it mattered. Only family. 3 weeks later, I received a letter. There was no return address. But I immediately recognized the handwriting. Olivia. I stared at the envelope for several minutes before opening it. Inside was a handwritten note, several pages long. An apology. A real apology. Not excuses. Not explanations. Just regret. She admitted everything. Every lie. Every manipulation. Every selfish decision. Near the end, one sentence stood out. I stole 15 years from you because I was afraid of losing everything. In the end, I lost everything anyway. I read those words 3 times. Because they were true. Painfully true. 1 month later, I stood on a beach watching the sunset. Free. Completely free. For the first time in 15 years, no bars surrounded me. No lakes. No guards. No walls. Just open sky. Open water. Open possibilities. I couldn't change the past. Nobody could. But I could choose what happened next. And for the first time in a very long time, the future belonged to me. Freedom felt strange. For 15 years, every minute of my life had been controlled. When to wake up. When to eat. When to sleep. Where to go. What to do. And now, suddenly I could do anything. The first few weeks felt unreal. Sometimes I woke up expecting prison walls. Instead, I saw sunlight. Open windows. A future. But healing wasn't as simple as walking out of prison. Because freedom had returned. The pain hadn't disappeared. And one question continued haunting me. What would happen if I saw Olivia again? 3 months after my release, another letter arrived. This time it was much shorter. Only a few lines. Emma, please meet me. I don't deserve it. But I need to tell you something face to face. Please. Olivia, I stared at the letter for a long time. Part of me wanted to throw it away. Part of me wanted answers. After 15 years of anger, betrayal, and silence, I wasn't sure what I felt anymore. Eventually, I agreed. Not for Olivia. For myself. Because some chapters need an ending. We met at a small park outside town. A quiet place. The kind of place where nobody paid attention. I arrived first. 10 minutes later, Olivia appeared. And for a moment, I barely recognized her. The confident woman from magazine covers was gone. The successful CEO was gone. The woman who once controlled everything was gone. She looked exhausted. Older. Broken. But every time I had a chance to tell the truth, I got scared. She looked down. Then it became easier to keep lying. I felt anger rising inside me. Not because I didn't believe her. Because I did. And somehow that made it worse. Because it meant my life had been destroyed by cowardice. Not necessity. Not survival. Cowardice. Do you know what prison was like? I asked quietly. Olivia wiped her tears. No. I nodded. Of course you don't. For the next hour, I told her everything. The loneliness. The humiliation. The birthdays I missed. The friends I lost. The nights I cried myself to sleep. The moments when I almost gave up. Every painful detail. Olivia listened silently. And with every word, she seemed to shrink a little more. Because, for the first time, she wasn't imagining the consequences. She was hearing them. When I finished, neither of us spoke. The wind moved gently across the lake. Birds sang in the distance. Life continued. As if none of this had happened. Finally, Olivia whispered, I'm sorry. I looked at her. Really looked at her. And I realized something unexpected. She was suffering. Not because she got caught. Because she had finally understood what she had done. For 15 years she had carried guilt. Now she was carrying truth. And truth weighs more than guilt. Then she asked the question I knew was coming. Can you ever forgive me? The question hung in the air. Heavy. Painful. Complicated. I thought about the prison years. The lost opportunities. The stolen future. The pain. The betrayal. Could I forgive that? Honestly, I didn't know. Not completely. Maybe never completely. But I knew one thing. Hatred had already stolen enough of my life. I wasn't willing to give it anymore. I don't know if I can forgive everything. Tears rolled down Olivia's face. But I don't want to hate you anymore. For a moment, she simply stared at me. Then she cried harder than before. Not dramatic tears. Not manipulative tears. Relieved tears. The tears of someone who had been carrying a secret for too long. As the sun began setting, we stood,